Have you ever felt a cold touch when you were all alone? A brush of unseen fingers against your skin, sending shivers down your spine. Tonight we delve into the unsettling world of ghostly encounters, where the veil between our world and the spectral realm wears thin. We explore 3 true horror stories, each more chilling than the last, that will leave you questioning the nature of reality itself. These are the tales of those who have felt the icy grip of the supernatural, a touch that lingers long after the encounter. So turn off the lights, turn up the volume, and prepare to be drawn into the shadows as we explore the terrifying phenomenon of ghostly hands and the stories of those who have felt their chilling touch. The old house creaked and groaned around Sarah, a symphony of settling wood and whistling drafts. It was a symphony she was used to, a soundtrack to her solitary life within its aging walls. She sat curled in an armchair, a worn paperback in hand, the only light emanating from a flickering lamp beside her. A chill snaked through the room, raising goosebumps on her arms. She pulled her sweater tighter, dismissing it as another draft in the drafty old house. Then it happened. A soft, feather-light touch grazed the back of her neck. She froze, heart pounding against her ribs. Slowly she turned her head, expecting to find a cobweb or a stray strand of hair brushing her skin, but there was nothing there. Unease prickled at the edges of her mind. She tried to rationalize, to explain away the sensation. A trick of the mind, perhaps? A draft playing on her senses? She returned to her book, but the words swam before her eyes. The silence of the house, once comforting, now pressed in on her, thick with unseen menace. Then it happened again. This time a distinct pressure, cold and unmistakable, settled on her shoulder. Terror, sharp and icy, flooded her veins. She leapt from the chair, whirling around to confront the unseen presence. The room was empty, the shadows in the corners seeming to deepen and writhe as she watched. She fled the room, the feeling of an unseen entity lingering in her wake. Days turned into sleepless nights, each creak of the house, each draught of cold air, a chilling reminder of the ghostly touch. One evening, as she sat in the living room, her gaze fell upon an old photograph tucked away on a dusty shelf. It depicted a young woman, her features obscured by time and fading ink. As Sarah stared at the photo, a wave of dizziness washed over her, and she swore the woman in the picture turned her head, her eyes meeting Sarah's across the divide of time. And in that instant, Sarah knew. She was not alone in the house. The days that followed were a blur of anxiety and sleeplessness. Sarah found herself pacing the halls, her mind racing with questions and fears. She began researching the history of the house, diving into old books and scouring the internet for any clues about its past. She discovered old newspaper clippings that spoke of a tragic story, a young woman who had lived there decades ago and had mysteriously disappeared. The more she read, the more she felt a strange connection to the past, as if the house itself was trying to communicate with her. One night, determined to confront whatever was haunting her, Sarah decided to perform a séance. She lit candles and created a protective circle in the living room. She called out to the spirit, asking it to reveal itself, to explain its presence. The candles flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls, and the room grew colder, the air thick with anticipation. Sarah felt a presence, a weight in the air, as if someone was standing right beside her. A faint whisper reached her ears, a voice so soft it was almost imperceptible, but it sent chills down her spine. She closed her eyes, concentrating, trying to make out the words. Suddenly she felt a touch on her hand, gentle yet unmistakable. Her eyes flew open, but the room was empty, the shadows still dancing in the candlelight. Yet instead of fear, a sense of peace washed over her. It was as if the spirit was trying to communicate, not harm. Over the next few days, Sarah continued her research, piecing together the story of the young woman. She felt a sense of closure, understanding that the spirit was seeking recognition, a connection to the living. When she finally decided to leave the old house, she did so with a sense of gratitude. She looked back one last time, a smile on her lips, knowing she had made peace with the past. The house stood silent in the dawn light, its secrets now shared, its ghostly presence at rest. And as Sarah walked away, she felt lighter, ready to embrace a new beginning, free from the phantom touch that had once haunted her. The abandoned house stood at the end of a gravel path, its silhouette dark and foreboding against the twilight sky. Shrouded in an eerie silence, the house seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next unsuspecting visitor. It was the kind of place that whispered tales of forgotten tragedies, its walls echoing with the faintest hints of sorrow and despair. Its broken windows, like vacant eyes staring out at the world, seemed to follow every movement with a silent, haunting gaze. A group of friends, eager for a thrill and driven by curiosity, dared to venture inside, their laughter masking a growing sense of dread. Among them was Jake, skeptical and cocky, determined to debunk the local legends that clung to the house like cobwebs, dismissing the warnings as mere superstition. The air inside was heavy with the smell of decay, and dust motes danced in the faint beams of sunlight that pierced the boarded-up windows, casting an ethereal glow. As they moved deeper into the house, the laughter and jokes died down, replaced by an uneasy silence that seemed to press in from all sides. The air grew noticeably colder, sending chills down their spines, as if the house itself was exhaling a breath of icy warning. Jake, determined to maintain his facade of bravery, wandered away from the group, his footsteps echoing in the stillness, each step amplifying the eerie quiet. He found himself in a small, dusty room, the remnants of furniture draped in white sheets like ghostly apparitions frozen in time. He reached out to touch one, his fingers passing through the cold, damp fabric, feeling the chill seep into his skin. As he did, a cold, clammy hand clamped around his wrist, its grip like iron, sending a jolt of fear through him. He cried out in shock, trying to wrench his arm free, but the grip was unyielding, as if the very shadows had come to life. Panic surged through him, his heart pounding against his ribs like a drum, each beat echoing his growing terror. He pulled with all his might, and the hand released its grip with a sickening crack, the sound reverberating through the room. He stumbled back, his eyes wide with terror, as a cold spot settled in the air where the hand had been, a lingering reminder of the encounter. He fled the room, his breath catching in his throat, the feeling of unseen eyes following his every move, watching, waiting. He rejoined his friends, his face pale, his voice trembling as he recounted his experience, the words tumbling out in a rush. They dismissed it as a prank, laughing nervously, but Jake knew the truth, the fear still etched in his eyes. He had felt the icy touch of the supernatural, a touch that lingered long after they had fled the confines of the haunted house, a touch that would haunt his dreams for nights to come. The first touch came as Emily slept, a gentle caress across her cheek, like a whisper in the night. She stirred, her subconscious attributing it to the warmth of her blankets, the comfort of her familiar bed. But deep down, a primal fear began to stir, an ancient instinct warning her of unseen dangers. The second touch was more insistent, a firm pressure on her arm, shaking her awake with an urgency that couldn't be ignored. Her eyes flew open, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, each beat echoing the terror that gripped her. The room was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of the moon through the window, casting eerie shadows on the walls. She lay there, paralyzed by fear, as the pressure on her arm intensified, leaving marks that seemed to burn into her skin. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips, her voice trapped by the overwhelming terror. She thrashed against the unseen grip, her mind racing, desperately seeking an explanation, a reason for this nightmare. Then, as quickly as it had begun, it stopped, leaving her in a silence that was almost as terrifying as the touch itself. The pressure on her arm vanished, leaving behind a chilling coldness that seemed to seep into her very bones, a cold that no blanket could warm. She lay there for what felt like an eternity, her breath coming in ragged gasps, before she finally found the courage to switch on the bedside lamp, hoping the light would banish her fears. The room appeared normal, but the fear that had gripped her refused to subside, lingering like a shadow in the corners of her mind. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the core, that she was not alone, that something had been there with her. As she lay there, her mind replaying the terrifying events of the night, she noticed something strange, something out of place. On her bedside table, where a glass of water had been, there was now a single white feather, pristine and out of context. It lay there, stark against the dark wood, a chilling reminder of the unseen visitor that had invaded her sleep, a token of the unknown. From that night forward, Emily was plagued by nightmares, the feeling of unseen eyes watching her every move, a constant presence in the dark. The feather remained on her bedside table, a constant, tangible reminder of the night she had been touched by something beyond the realm of the living, a mystery that haunted her waking hours and her dreams. These are just a few of the countless stories of those who have felt the chilling touch of the supernatural. Whether a fleeting brush against your skin or a vice-like grip, these encounters leave an indelible mark on the psyche. They serve as chilling reminders that there are forces at play in our world that we do not fully understand. So the next time you feel a cold spot or a shiver down your spine, remember these tales. You might not be alone.